Oh, don't you know that wood is good for the world?
Hello again, everybody. My name is Fergus. I'm from Kimberlin Education in Sydney, and I'm very happy to welcome you all, students, teachers and parents from across Australia, to Forest Science Explorers. Now, today we have some very special guests. You might know that we're going to meet George the farmer from ABC Kids, and we're also going to meet his mate Ben and a forester, Clinton. First of all, I'll tell you what we're going to be doing today. So I'll run through what's going to be in the session. Now, you'll have seen the chat box down the bottom. Now, that chat just comes to me and my colleagues, and that will give you an opportunity to answer some questions, some very straightforward questions throughout the session, and even to ask some of your own questions of our forester, Clinton. And I'll let you know when you can do that throughout the session. Very straightforward. I'll show you my screen again, and I'll show you what we're going to get up to today and the topics we're going to cover. So, as you can see, today we will learn, what does a forester do? So a forester, some of you might not know what a forester is. A forester plants, grows and harvests trees and manages the forests in a sustainable way. But our forester, Clinton, will talk a lot more about that. So we're going to look at what they do, what is timber used for, and why is it important that timber or wood is grown sustainably? And we'll talk about what that means as well. Here's a little introduction to our forester, Clinton, who we'll meet in just a moment. Clinton lives in Mount Gambier in South Australia. He loves trees and growing healthy forests to provide timber for all of us. He's passionate about growing wood because it's carbon positive and fully renewable. And Clinton will talk about what that means. And he loves sharing his passion for forestry with young people like you. You can see on the map where Clinton lives, and that's Mount Gambier. That's where he's coming to us from today, down in far southeastern South Australia, right near the border with Victoria. I know lots of you might come from South Australia or Victoria, and like I said, there are students coming to us from around every state and territory today. So welcome, and we're going to introduce our special guests, Clinton, Ben, and George the farmer.
Hey
guys. Hi guys, how you feeling?
Oh, we're just super pumped to be here today in the middle of what we're going to be learning about really soon with Clinton. And it's so exciting to be part of the Forest Science Explorers, to learn all about forest science here in Mount Gambier. We're really looking forward to talking to all of you kids all across Australia.
Looks beautiful where you are, much nicer than my little office in Sydney. Today, Ben, you're going to be interviewing Clinton, are you?
That is exactly right. We're going to be asking Clinton a whole range of questions all about forestry. And we know that Clinton is the guy we need because he is an expert and loves everything about timber and trees.
Beautiful. Take it away, guys.
Fantastic. Okay, Clinton, now there's a bit of a clue because we're standing right in the middle of it. But where does a forester work?
Well, thanks, Ben. It's good to be here. A forester works in a forest. So we grow and manage forests. And out here, we are in this forest that is managed by a forester. We also work in the office, but this is the place we prefer to be out here, whether it's planting the trees, measuring them, or harvesting them. There's lots of jobs that are done out here in the forest.
So, Clinton, the forester is out in the forest a lot of the time, aren't they?
Yes.
Wow, it is such a beautiful place to be, guys. It's really hard to explain, but I'd love to ask the students a question, Fergus. Who has ever visited a forest, maybe bushwalking or camping, and I'm wondering if the kids can tell me maybe what kind of sounds they've heard and maybe what kind of smells as well. Clinton, what can we hear and smell today in the forest?
Well, I can hear the birds chirping in the background and the wind's blowing through the trees, and you can smell a bit of the earthy material and the leaves on the ground. And we've got a bit of pollen blowing through today as well.
We certainly have. There's a lot of yellow pollen all over the place at the moment. But one thing that's quite exciting and quite interesting about this plantation, Clinton, is that it's a lot cooler than it is outside the plantation, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So the sun is being shaded by these trees. They're capturing that sunlight and growing using that sunlight, and it's creating a nice cool environment in here.
That's fantastic. Well, let's cross over to Fergus and see if he can tell us what some of the people have seen in a forest before.
Lots of answers coming through, guys. We've got the smell of fresh earth. Lots of people mentioning the birds chirping, and a couple of kids have mentioned that they like to go horse riding out in the forest. Other people, trees, frogs, water. So all the beautiful elements of nature that we'd expect.
Oh, that is wonderful. It is an absolutely beautiful place to be in today. And we're extremely lucky, aren't we, George, to be here with Clinton. Now, Clinton, I'm going to ask you another question, and we're going to queue up a video that you're going to be able to speak to. But what does a forester do, and what are all the different jobs that you do in a forest throughout the year?
Well, there's lots of jobs we do. We've just finished planting down here, but before that, there's also, you've got to get the seed, you've got to grow the little pine tree for us here before it gets planted. There's preparation of that site before you plant it. Once they're growing, you've got to look after them, make sure they're healthy, got to control the weeds, any noxious weeds as well, and then they're growing. You've got to measure it, you've got to know how much is out there, and once you've got that, then we start thinning the forest. That's taking away a few of the trees just to get some production and open the space up for the trees to grow more. That's harvesting, and once they're harvested, they're sent to the sawmill. So there's lots of jobs out there, and there's fire management when fire comes on, and there's mapping and all sorts of range of jobs. There's too many to really go into here at the moment.
It sounds like a fascinating job to be a part of.
Yeah, and there's so much variety.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Now, I think we do actually have a video showing nurseries and forests planting in action.
Yeah, so here we've got this is a plug of a little seedling that's got a plug. I mean, I've got one down here, it's a bare root, but this is a massive nursery to grow so many of those trees that we need to replant from when we've done our harvesting so that we can grow the next rotation on. It's the next forest that we're going to grow, and they're all looked after and managed there. You can see the roots growing down there that we planted when it comes time for planting season, which we've just finished. And they're all very uniform and very healthy. And they're an important part of the sustainable process. Here you can see the trees that are already, 2 to 3 years on. Weed control's great. They're all green and healthy. They're occupying the site. Now they're almost occupied the whole site. They're getting up. We're pretty happy with the health of those and the size and uniformity. And then those trees will be growing on to what we'll be managing and harvesting later on.
That is fantastic. Actually, I saw some of those trees and they looked a little bit like Christmas trees, didn't I? I was expecting to see a little bit of tinsel on them. They look fantastic. Thank you, Clinton, for showing us that. There was some amazing footage there. And actually, kids, you can find some more footage on forestry at George the Farmer's forestry video on YouTube and ABC iView. Make sure you check that out. Now, Clinton, I've got another question.
Yeah.
And this might be a bit tricky. I reckon it will be. Why do we grow trees, and what is timber?
Well, we grow trees to grow wood, and they are producing all this wood so that we can harvest it, and then it can be turned into timber. And that timber is for using to build things, mainly structural building for houses and that, but we can also get other products like posts for fencing and for vineyards. We can get wood chips to make paper, and you can use it to make cardboard. There's so many versatile uses we can use with that wood.
Wow,
not
that
just
sounds
timber.
amazing. That actually sounds amazing. Thank you, Clinton. That is brilliant. So we're growing trees in Australia. We're turning it into timber. I'm wondering, how is most timber grown in Australia?
Most timber in Australia is grown in a place like this, which is a plantation. So we're in a pine plantation here, and this grows lots of timber for your structural, for your building and that. And we also grow blue gums to create wood chips and paper, but there is also native forests. But because we've got so many plantations that provide so much of their wood, we don't have to harvest those native forests, and they produce more different types of timber, whether they're appearance grade or whether they're really structural, really strong structural beams in that. But most of our timber comes out of plantations like this.
Comes out of plantations. Nice long rows of trees. Oh, that is fantastic. Now, I'm going to throw back to Fergus, because I think we might have a true or false question now for the kids, and also a chance for the kids to ask Clinton a question as well.
Beautiful, thanks, Ben. Yes, very straightforward question. It's time for you students out there to do a little bit of work, but I'm sure you will have no trouble with this. Here's your question. Timber is the name for wood that is used in building and construction. Is that what Clinton just told us? Timber is the name for wood that is used in building and construction. Put your answer in the chat box. Is that true or is that false? And if you put your answer in there, maybe you can put a question in for Clinton too. If you have a little question that you'd like to ask a forester, pop it in there, and I can see all those answers rushing in. They all look pretty good so far. The answer, everybody, true. Of course, that's exactly what we just learned. Timber is wood that is used in building and construction, like making houses, for example. Now, questions for Clinton. Pop your questions in the chat box there. And here's our first question. This one's from Aidan, Clinton, and it says, how long does it take to grow these trees?
Right, so these pine trees, we grow them for around about 30 to 32 years. And that's just to get the size of them up to the right size for the sawmill that gets the best timber out of them. And it's part of our management process. We don't want to cut them down too early. They're too small and you don't get the good quality timber out of them. So for us in this region, it's 30, 32 years.
Beautiful. And another one is, how tall do they get?
Does depend on the site. Some sites where they will grow won't grow as tall, but we can get them up to 40 to 45 meters. An exceptional tree will be 50 meters tall by that stage. So they do grow very tall, and they grow tall very quickly. So it's not long before they're above my head. And then before that, they are up to heading to the sky.
And how, another related question, Clinton, some really good questions coming in, guys. How heavy would one of these trees be when you harvest it?
Well, when they harvest them, they are very heavy. They can be up to 2 tons at least. So we just look at the little logs down the bottom, but you've got so many logs there that it does come up to about 2 tons, and they're full of moisture, but they're full of wood as well. So they are very heavy. So you need big machines to handle them.
Beautiful. And I think we'll get a chance to look at those in just a moment. I'll throw it back to you, Ben, and I think you've got some more questions for, well, actually, first you've got a beautiful song to sing us.
I have, Fergus. Now I'm holding onto a guitar, which is made from wood. And George the farmer and I have written a great song, which is called Wood is Good for the World. And we would love for you guys to join in and have a little bit of a boogie with Clinton, George, and I. Now ask your parents or teachers if it's okay if you have a dance. And if you do, look out for your mate. But we're going to sing Wood is Good for the World. I hope you enjoy it. Let's go. Long, long rows of trees just doing their thing. Growing straight and tall, hear the birds sing. Pine and blue gum, some of the trees that we use, yeah. Marbow, oak and jarrah, hardwoods are too. Lord, don't you know that trees are good for the world? Oh, Lord, don't you know that wood is good for the world? Oh, forests take the carbon out of the air. It's great for us and the world that we share. The word is a fun one to say. Oh, carbon sequestration saving the day. Lord, don't you know that trees are good for the world? Oh, Lord, don't you know that wood is good for the world? Oh, trucks and harvesters have got a big job to cut and trim and load all of that wood. It takes a lot of people doing that work, oh, to grow our trees and turn them into straight wood. Lord, don't you know that trees are good for the world? Oh, Lord, don't you know that wood is good for the world? Oh, building trees into the timber we use to build all kinds of things with hammers and nails. Fences, kennels, sheds, and frames for our homes. Oh, timber is a great material to use. Lord, don't you know that trees are good for the world? Oh, Lord, don't you know that wood is good for the world? Oh, Lord, don't you know that trees are good for the world? Oh, Lord, don't you know that wood is good for the world? There we go, guys. The timber
Well
song,
done, guys.
Wood is good for the world. There we go.
10 out of 10 for dancing as well.
Well done, everybody. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed that song. And now there's actually a couple of clues in that song. So some of the questions we might ask a little bit later, but I'm going to ask another question of our forester, Clinton here. And we also have another video that he's going to talk about some amazing machinery. So now we saw how trees are growing and we've learned what timber is, but Clinton, how do we turn the trees into timber and what are some of the incredible machines that you foresters use?
Right, so as we discussed before, those trees are very big, so we need a machine to handle them. So we have a harvester, and that's just an excavator wheeled machine that's got a long crane arm with a harvesting head, and that harvesting head goes up to the tree, has a chainsaw bar, and that cuts the tree down and controls the falling of that. It goes up and delimbs, and it cuts the tree into log lengths, and they're laid out in the forest. And after that's gone through a forder, which is a big machine with like a wheelbarrow on steroids, and it's got a big bunk at the back, it's got an arm, and it picks up those logs and it places them in the back, and it takes them out to the roadside where it unloads them, and from there they're loaded up onto big trucks that have two trailers on there, and they're taken to the mill.
Fantastic. There we go. I think we've actually got a video.
Show you about that, gentleman. Very speedy video.
Yeah, there you can see he's cutting them up there into logs. There's falling the tree. It's gone down safely on the ground. Now he's running the harvesting head through to cut a log there. He selected the point. Here we have the harvest manager out there looking at operation there.
Wow, fantastic.
I'll show you that again, guys.
Yeah, so that's the harvesting head working there. The tree's been fallen. That's the big arm that's holding it there. It's running along there, and he's actually measuring as he's going along. So the operator knows what length it is and cuts it to there, and all the information is being fed through, so they actually know how much they've cut for the day. It's very technical out there.
Now we have another video showing the sawmill. Actually, I'll show you that next, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
Oh, the other boards have been cut off from the main head rig there, I think, and they've been slowed down. Yep.
Wow.
So that's a big long log big log that's gone, it's been cut off to make those flat boards. And then from that there, they'll cut those up into the actual boards that you're used to seeing as they go through the mill. There they are, all been cut out there nicely. And then they'll get planed and come out for the stacker to stack each specific type, because they're all different dimensions that we need for different tasks.
Wow, look at that. That is fantastic, Clinton.
Yeah.
I can't imagine all this technology that we have right in the forestry industry here. Yeah.
There's a big stacks of the different types. Yeah.
That looks amazing, mate. That is fantastic. And I hope you guys have enjoyed seeing that very cool machinery. And I love the machinery side. So now, Clinton, I'm going to actually pose a question again to the kids. And I'm wondering if Fergus can give us some of the answers back. But kids, I'm wondering if you can tell me, what things do you know that are made from wood? And maybe pop your answer in the little chat box there and see what we've got. Right. And while we're doing that, we might ask Clinton a little bit about what he knows, what we can use timber for.
Well, we can use timber for a lot of things. It's really versatile, you know, structural, building your houses, fences. I mean, it comes into other things like you've got pencils, you've got toilet paper. So it's not just that, you've got your rulers. So there's lots of things that we make use of it. You can make plywood board to do other things as well, like for construction. So there's different types of construction. It's not just that solid wood as well. There's the paper cardboard for packaging. There's a huge range of different products that you can make.
Wow, unreal. Okay, let's see what the kids might have thought.
Yes, lots of great answers coming through, guys. Skateboard was a really interesting one.
Nice one.
Piano. Cubby house, and lots of people making note that their house is made of wood, tables, chairs, bookshelves, and house frames as well. So yeah, lots of really good answers there, everybody.
Oh, well done, everybody. That is fantastic. We love hearing back about what you think that wood can be used for. But I'm wondering, Clinton, what makes wood such a great material for making all these wonderful things that we use every day?
I sort of said that before, with the fact that you can make so many different things. It's so versatile. It's a utility. The timber's so utility wise. You can make furniture and housing to paper to soft products like that. You can soft. You can make nappies out of for that to absorbent. But not just that. It's renewable. So it's not just one use. We can regrow and make more of it. So we can constantly make more of this product out there, and that it's so sustainable in the fact that because we're managing it like that, we get more of it. Plus, once you're finished with it, like the paper products and that, and even the wood, it will break down. It is part of nature. It can go back to nature.
Yeah, so it's not like plastic or metal, which are going to hang around for a lot of years. Wood, it'll actually break down and is a renewable resource. That is fantastic. Now, I'm wondering, Clinton, I mean, we've got a guitar. That's pretty cool. We've got rulers and pencils, but everyone knows about that. What are some of the more unusual things that we can make from wood that the kids might not know about?
Yeah, so, I mean, traditionally boats have been made, particularly your dinghies, using really good timbers to make them. There is planes have been used out of them. We've got the spruce goose as a famous plane that's made entirely out of spruce. There's even some helicopter blades that are used in there, and also the blades of wind turbines, internal. Sometimes they use balsa wood in them. So there's those sorts of uses there. There's also clothing, like they invented rayon and viscose, which is like clothing material that you use. So people aren't aware of that. Then there's more technology being created to use those small products within the wood. But at the moment, there's a big push into multi-story buildings. So using and engineering that wood in a different way so that it can actually build multiple stories.
Wow.
So I think there's a
I think we've got some photos here.
footage here. They've got houses and the furniture there, but it's going to the next level of, being able to build something that's 10 stories high, which we haven't been able to do before. And that's just using a different way.
So skyscrapers using timber.
Yeah, and it's all timber through, to hold it up and make wide open spaces and floor and roof. It's fantastic.
That is amazing. That is amazing. We can do so many amazing things with wood. I maybe the kids can even give us a little bit of an idea of maybe some of the weird and wonderful things that they know may have been made from wood as well. But I think now it's another chance for us to ask another true or false question and get the kids to pose a few questions back to Clinton.
It is, guys. Thanks very much. And this picture you can see on the screen, everybody. This is a building that's being planned for right in the middle of Sydney near Central Station, and it's going to be one of the, I think maybe when it's built, the biggest building made out of timber in the world. But we've got a question for you again, everybody. So let's see if you were listening. Timber is used to make cars, tractors, and some fridges. Is that true or is that false? Is that what Clinton said? Did he really say that, or is he trying to trick us here? Timber is used to make cars, tractors, and some fridges. Oh, you're all very, very switched on and fantastic listeners. Lots of great answers coming through. And of course, this one's false. No tractors and fridges made out of timber, but some planes and some boats. Now, I hope you've been having a think about more questions to put to Clinton. Put those questions in the chat box. And we'll start. Clinton, I've got a really good question that I saw. And this one is, do you have to water the trees? And I guess maybe at what stages do you have to water these trees throughout their lifetime?
So when we first plant the seeds and grow the little seedlings or cuttings, that they need to be watered at that stage. But then we do harden them off. And once they go out into the plantation, that's it. That's why we plant in wintertime, relying on that rainfall. And that's why we control the weeds so that the water is available to them. So we do not water them. They have to survive on the rainfall that comes. And that's why we grow these plantations in these more wetter areas of Australia.
Beautiful. And another question is, what types of trees do you grow, Clinton?
So types of trees that I grow the trees we see here, which is Pinus radiata. It's a pine tree. It's made for construction timber. The other main tree grown here is also blue gum, Tasmanian blue gum, and that's grown for paper. But I mainly grow the pine tree, which creates that wooden timber.
Another good question is, are there plantations like this one all over Australia?
Yeah, there are plantations in different parts of Australia where there's good rainfall. Tasmania's got them through Victoria to Gippsland, up in the Alpine ranges over on in Tumut, and there coming through the back of Sydney there in the hills there, up in Queensland, all the way through Queensland. They change to different species there. It's like warmer, it's tropical, so you have the native hoop pine as well. And then over in Western Australia, in the southwest area there, where there's enough moisture, they grow plantations there of pine as well as blue gum. And you do get on the very north, you do get plantations of sandalwood.
Beautiful. Last question, and it's a nice one. What do you like about being a forester, Clinton?
I like the diversity of being a forester and being out in the natural world and working with so many great people. You know, we've got such diverse background of people working with so many different jobs. That is really, it's that diversity, the outdoors, indoors, and the people. So it is a great diverse workforce and workplace.
Beautiful. We have a little video to move on with now, Ben, is that correct?
Yes, I think we do. Yep, I reckon we might be playing now a video that might explain to us a little bit about a word that Clinton used just before, which is sustainable.
And we'll have a chat about it afterwards.
This is our planet, Earth. The Earth is huge, and we share the oceans and the air with every living thing, all the other people around us, all the animals, and all the plants. We have to look after the Earth. After all, it's our home. The Earth is very clever. It has all it needs to keep healthy and for animals to reproduce and plants to grow. But we humans often do things that interfere with how the Earth works. For a long time now, humans have been making too much rubbish and pollution. That's why it's important to recycle, catch public transport, and always put your rubbish in the bin. It's not always easy to see pollution, especially if it's in the air. Air pollution is made from tiny particles called carbon dioxide. If you live in the city, you've probably seen smog in the sky. Too much carbon dioxide in the air is causing the Earth to heat up. This is called global warming. You may have heard people talk about it on the news. If we don't find ways to take more carbon dioxide from the air, then our world will become more and more polluted. It'll be harder for farmers to grow the food we eat, and animals will get sick too. So what can we do? Well, luckily the Earth has its own natural helpers that can take carbon dioxide from the air. Trees! Trees take in carbon dioxide through their leaves and store the carbon inside, in the wood. Then they release nice, clean oxygen for us to breathe. So forests and tree farms are not just great places for us to visit and for animals to live, but they're also giving us clean air. We can turn trees into all sorts of things. Houses, cricket bats, guitars or furniture. And the good news is, all that carbon they've absorbed still stays inside. How cool is that? In Australia, we're always planting more and more trees in tree farms, in native forests and in our towns and cities. We always replace the ones that we use, so there are always more trees growing. And growing trees love carbon, so the more trees we can plant, the happier the Earth will be. Trees really can save the world. Hooray!
Hooray, guys.
What a tremendous video. That was fantastic. Thank you, Fergs. Okay, another question for Clinton. And I think we may have learned a little bit about in that video just then. We know the trees are great. They're beautiful. They're majestic. They're fun to climb. But why do people say trees are good for the planet? Why are they good for the environment?
Well, trees are good for the environment, as we saw there. They take that carbon dioxide out of the air. They photosynthesize it, they turn it into the wood, and that locks that carbon up. So by having trees and plantations, they are absorbing all that carbon dioxide and locking it up. And they also change the environment. Then that sunlight hitting them, they're absorbing that sunlight, turning it into the carbon dioxide into the wood. They're also cooling the environment, releasing a bit of moisture and creating a bit of cloud cover. And that also helps with that environmental climate.
It's amazing, isn't it, George? We've got such an amazing thing here in our beautiful trees. So, Clinton, trees are really good for the planet. We know that. And that's why people say we should grow our timber sustainably. But I'm a bit confused. What do we mean when we say timber in Australia is grown sustainably? What does sustainable mean and how do we know?
Okay, so sustainable means that for every tree we cut down, we are replanting another tree. So it means that we're not just going out there and taking them and that's it. We have replanted them, so that means future generations will have that availability to that wood. And so we've constantly got a constant supply of wood going there. And sustainability also means about managing the environment in a sustainable way. So protecting those other areas that are in there, and also looking after the soils and making sure we don't damage it by having pollution and things like that, as well as making sure we're doing the right thing.
No,
And-
fantastic.
Yeah.
That's awesome, mate. That's awesome. So let's say we wanted to build a kennel or a fence at our place. How do we know that we're buying sustainable timber in Australia?
So sustainability, you have certification. So you might have a label on it. So here's an example of one label there. You've also got books that you can show the...
Yeah, well, that's right. With the George the Farmer books have actually got an FSC sustainable badge on there as well, which I think we're popping up on the camera there, which is pretty amazing.
And you might get your tissues and you'll see on the back, and there might be, this one here's got an FSC label. So that's another certification. This A4 paper has got a PEFC label on it. So what that means is that a third party, so someone else has come in and audited and checked to make sure that that the forest management and the process is followed the guidelines and standards to make sure that it is sustainable. So it gives you state of clear mind that you know that it has been done sustainably. It's not just taking the word of the grower themselves. It's actually someone else's.
That's fantastic.
Warranted that it's right.
That's right. So kids, you can go with mum and dad or your grandparents or your carers, and you can go and find sustainable timber growing right here in Australia for your next project. Now, Clinton, I've got one more question on sustainability. So sustainable Aussie forests help in the fight against climate change. What are some of the other ways that kids and schools out there can help fight against climate change?
Well, one of the things you can do is you can recycle your paper products, and so we can use them again. That's really good. You can also do things like substituting. So if you've got, instead of using plastic, you can use paper. So use a paper bag rather than a plastic bag, and you can also reuse what you've got. Like if you take something down that's using wood, you can reuse that wood again. You don't need to throw it out because it's still got another life left in it. So it's repurposing it potentially as well. And the other thing you can do is also potentially plant some trees at your place or in your school there, and do other things like just reduce electricity, turn your lights off and try and minimize your travel that you need to do, be more efficient in those ways. And that'll reduce your uses of those precious resources.
Fantastic. And not use too much plastic, like sticking your lunch, your sandwich in plastic. You can, maybe use something else to
or use your lunchbox at the same time rather than something you can reuse again rather than one use.
Well, that is awesome. That is awesome. Now, Clinton, I've heard you use the word carbon a bit, and you gave me something really special before we started today. And this really special thing here is called a carbon storage tape measure. Look at that. It goes on forever. And this special carbon storage tape measure actually tells us how much carbon is stored in a tree. Now, we're going to go over to this tree, guys. We're going to head over here. And we're going to take our carbon tape measure and we're going to wrap it around the tree about our chest height. We're going to wrap it around and we're going to line it up. And it tells us that that tree is about 125 centimeters in circumference. And that means within this tree, it's stored enough carbon or equal amounts of carbon to fly 60 students from the Gold Coast to Melbourne one way. That is amazing. This tree here holds the same amount of carbon as if we took 60 students, popped them in a plane, flew them to the Gold Coast, and then from Melbourne one way. Now, I know we can't fly at the moment from Gold Coast to Melbourne, but that is amazing how many trees that we've got in this plantation are all doing the same thing, Clinton. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's right. So we've got 100,000 trees at least, and if they're all growing that and storing that much carbon, that is a phenomenal amount of carbon. And that's just one little forest here in a region with hectares of forest.
I know, that is amazing. And the great thing about this carbon storage tape is you can actually find it in George the Farmer's Sustainable Forest Management and Pine Plantation Forestry Educators Guides. And they're free to download off our website at georgethefarmer.com.au. And we're going to have a link for them after this as well. There you go. So you can download your own carbon storage tape and figure out what your trees are doing around at your place. Okay, right. Well, Fergus, I think we might have another true or false question. Is that right?
We do, we do. This is our last one, everybody. So you can put your answer in the chat box there. And again, think of your final questions for Clinton. Clinton has to go back to work in just a moment. So we'll have one more opportunity to ask him a few questions. But our last question for the students is, trees produce oxygen for us to breathe. True or false? Liam White is the first one to get his answer in. Trees produce oxygen for us to breathe. Is that what Clinton said? Oh, was I listening? Again, it looks like all of you are putting in fantastic answers. And the answer is true, of course. Trees produce oxygen. It's one reason why they're so fantastic. As well as all the fantastic things we can make out of them, that's something that they do for the planet, which is really, really great. Now, we've got more questions as promised for you, Clinton. And I'm going to start with one from Chris, and it's a cheeky one, Clinton, but I thought we'd end with a fun one. He said, do you have to grow a beard to be a forester?
No, you certainly don't. I'm normally clean shaven, but my kids especially asked me to grow a beard for a medieval festival coming up so they could plait it. So I said, yes, I would. But normally, beautiful. No, you don't have to have a beard at all.
All right, well, we'll pass that message on to Chris. So we've got some more serious questions here from Billy's got a nice one about you again, Clinton. How old were you when you became a forester?
So I was around about 20 when I became a forester, but I got interested in forestry when I was about 13, 14. I really set my sights on being a forester. So I've been practicing forestry for about 20 years now. So it's been a while, but it's been a good journey.
And how many foresters like you might there be in Australia, roughly?
Oh, there'd be a couple of thousand, I'd say. There's a lot of us down here, but spread throughout the country, there's a lot of them working in, or not just growing the trees, but in a whole range of things. I've got a friend who works in WA and he works in a sawmill, making sure they get the right logs for their mill. So there's a lot of different foresters working everywhere. So I'd say there'd be at least a couple of thousand. There's plenty of us out there, but we're scattered.
Now, here's a good question. I know the answer to this one. Of course, we've met some, but are there any female foresters?
Yeah, so I'm only doing this because Courtney couldn't do it today. And we have plenty of females working in our industry from a whole range of things. We even have female harvest operators. They're running the mill, working in the nursery, growing the seedlings. So in every facet of the process, we've got CEOs that are the female managers and everything. So we have them in the range and it's great having them there. And it does give we do have a nice diversity in our workforce. But I'm sorry that you didn't have Courtney today, you had me, but don't fear, there are plenty of females working in our industry.
Beautiful. Thank you, Clinton. We heard you were the second best dancer, Clinton, and that's how you got the job after Courtney.
Yeah.
Everyone out there, we can't thank you enough for joining us today. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, George, and thank you, Clinton. I'm just going to run through what we've learnt today, guys. So I'll show you on the screen the topics that we've heard about from Clinton about. Heard Clinton talk about what foresters do, what timber's used for, and why it's important that timber is grown sustainably. Now, we're going to send out some resources this afternoon, but you can also see the URL, the website on your screen right now, www.forestlearning.edu.au. You can find lots of educational resources there, including some very special George the Farmer forestry resources. We'll send out that information as well. And of course, thank you to George the Farmer and Ben, and thanks to all the students out there. Goodbye, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Very
See you, everybody.
sharing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us.
Have a fantastic afternoon.
Long, long rows of trees just doing the thing. Growing straight and tall, hear the birds sing. Pine and blue gums are some of the trees that we use, yeah. Baba, oak, and jarrah hardwoods are too. Lord, don't you know that trees are good for the world? Lord, don't you know that wood is good for the world? Forests take the carbon out of the air. It's great for us and the world that we share. Oh yeah! Word is a fun one to say, yeah. Carbon sequestration saving the day. Lord, don't you know that trees are good for the world? Oh, don't you know that wood is good for the world? Trucks and harvesters have got a big job to cut and trim and load all of that wood. It takes a lot of people doing that work, yeah, to grow our trees and turn it into straight wood. Oh, don't you know that trees are good for the world? Oh, don't you know that wood is good for the world? Milling trees into the timber we use to build all kinds of things with hammers and nails. Fences, kennels, sheds, and frames for our homes, yeah. Timber is a great material to use. Oh, don't you know that trees are good for the world, yeah. Oh, don't you know that wood is good for the world? Oh, don't you know that trees are good for the world, yeah. Oh, don't you know that wood is good for the world? Oh, don't you know that trees are good for the world, yeah. Oh, don't you know that wood is good for the world?